Today we'll be talking about bulimia nervosa, otherwise known as bulimia. I'm going to be going over the symptoms, the causes, and the treatments. But first, I'd like to welcome you to my channel. My name's Micheline. I'm a licensed therapist, and I post about mental health topics twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays. So if you're new to my channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and make sure your notification bell is turned on. That way you never miss an update. And if you're coming back to my channel and you're liking my content and you have benefited, you can help support me by hitting the thumbs up and dropping a comment in the box below. So let's get started. Bulimia is a serious disorder. People who have been diagnosed with bulimia typically binge on large amounts of food in a short period of time, and then they get rid of the food by using what we call compensatory behaviors, by either vomiting, using laxatives, or exercising for excessive amounts of time. Somebody with bulimia loses full control over what they're eating during the binges. So during the binges, they will consume, like I said, a large amount of food, typically within a 2-hour time frame. And they might find themselves dissociating while eating, or if they are present, they find it completely difficult or even sometimes impossible to stop themselves from eating. After they binge on the food, they feel guilt, they feel shame. And so that's why they participate in compensatory behaviors to get rid of the food. This is obviously extremely dangerous because it can result in deficiencies in nutrients and vitamins, dehydration, and a variety of other consequences, as I will go over in this video. According to the DSM-5, here are the criteria to be diagnosed with bulimia nervosa. Eating in a discrete period of time, so within 2 hours, you have to have eaten a large amount of food, which would not be considered normal for another person in that same scenario. So this isn't just the one meal you had at a restaurant. This is a large amount of food, typically not something that somebody can consume on their own. Now, the binges may be different for people. So that's one thing that when you go see a therapist about, they will assess to see what is a binge really to you. But typically it's above and beyond what you would be able to eat in a normal sitting. The second criteria is the person will have inappropriate compensatory behaviors, as I mentioned earlier. So some of these compensatory behaviors may be inducing vomiting within themselves. So after the binge, again, they feel shame and guilt. So then they will go to the bathroom and induce vomiting, or they may take laxatives or maybe go to the gym and exercise for hours on end until they feel that they have gotten rid of the calories that they have just consumed. So in order to be diagnosed with bulimia, this behavior has to be ongoing at least one time per week for at least 3 months. So the signs of bulimia fall into 3 categories, just like the ones I mentioned in anorexia. They fall into physical, behavioral, and psychological. The physical symptoms of bulimia can include fluctuations in weight. So maybe they'll lose weight and then they'll gain weight again. But it's really important to note that people with bulimia may not notice, you may not notice that there is an issue going on because they typically hold a pretty normal body weight. They might even be overweight. So they're often missed by their friends and family. But I will go over the behavioral symptoms so you know exactly what to look out for. So again, the physical symptoms for bulimia can include dizziness, fatigue, sleep problems because their body's malnourished. They might have a sensitivity to cold, dry skin, brittle nails, brittle hair that's falling out. They might have swelling around their face, around the salivary glands because they induce vomiting. So it causes all the acid from your stomach causes a lot of swelling to happen around your face. Their teeth might be discolored or may have a lot of cavities because, again, of the vomiting and all that acid coming up from your stomach does a lot of damage around your face and in your mouth. They might have super cold hands or swelling in their hands and feet. They might even have calluses around their fingers, and they have poor wound healing. The emotional symptoms of bulimia can include anxiety, depression, self-harm, and again, a distorted body image. So here's what to look out for. These are what we call the behavioral signs of bulimia. So the first sign is obviously signs of binging. So maybe there are a lot of snacks in the house and all of a sudden all of these snacks are gone. Maybe the person is making frequent trips to the bathroom, in particular after meals. Maybe you find evidence of wrappers or trash in areas of the house where they might be trying to hide the evidence for eating. You might find packages of diuretics or laxatives or other medication meant to aid in the compensatory behaviors to get rid of the food. So people who have bulimia also have more of a likelihood to be trying out all of these new fad diets because they're so obsessed with trying to lose the weight. So they might buy into the no sugar diet, the no carb diet, veganism, and all those other fad diets that you've heard out there. They might be jumping from one to another. Bulimics tend to drink an excessive amount of non-caloric drinks. So maybe a ton of water or diet sodas, teas that are artificially sweetened. They might hide their body with baggy clothes because, again, they're not happy with the way they look. One of the main things that differs bulimia from anorexia, the binge and purge type, is that in bulimia, typically the person knows that there's an issue. They know that this behavior isn't really right. And there's not as big of an emphasis on how many calories are consumed. And the person who is bulimic tends to hold an average body weight. They tend to not be a cause of concern to other people. And sometimes they're even overweight. So with anorexia, the person is underweight and even though they're purging, they're still restricting the amount of calories that they're intaking every single day. So those were some of the things to look out for. So again, the fad dieting, food disappearing, maybe frequent runs to the bathroom, and then some of the physical symptoms that we discussed earlier. Now, what causes bulimia? And as I've talked about in previous videos with any mental health disorders, there's usually not just one cause. There's always genetic factors and environmental factors that play a big role in the development of any mental health disorder. So typically with eating disorders, they're not necessarily about the food. Yes, there's an emphasis on the food. Yes, there's an emphasis on them wanting to lose weight, but it didn't start off that way. It may have started off as a form of control, maybe the only thing they could control in their lives. When we binge it out of emotional need. Maybe we feel sad or depressed or anxious. And food, in the short term, gives us that release and makes us feel good for that moment while we're eating. And so that's why after the binge, there's that feeling of shame and guilt. And because of that, the compensatory behaviors happen. So it starts as a way to fill some sort of void, and then the guilt rolls in. And at that point, the ongoingness of it, so a persistent pattern of binging and purging over a period of 3 months, and then that is the development of bulimia. But again, it's usually, to fill a void, something is going on, and in order to heal from an eating disorder, we really have to take a look at the underlying cause, what's going on, and possibly work on better coping skills. Which brings me to my next point. How do we treat it? So treatment for eating disorders, again, depends on what the underlying cause is. But typically dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, family therapy, along with working with a doctor to make sure that there's no underlying health condition. If you have lost a lot of weight, then they will take a look and make sure that there's nothing else going on. Working with a dietitian and a nutritionist to help you figure out what a healthy, balanced diet is and get you back to a normal weight, and take out the psychological component. So working with a dietitian can help you work on intuitive eating and help you find ways that you can eat and be satisfied. And the therapist can help you work through whatever emotional issues are going on, possibly processing some past traumas that could be leading to that emptiness and that void that's leading to the binge in the first place. As with anorexia, there's also treatment centers that specialize in working with people who have eating disorders. So if working with a therapist isn't enough, or if your case is really severe and you've gotten really sick because of bulimia, then it's probably likely that you might go to an eating disorder inpatient facility where they have doctors and therapists and dietitians, and they take this holistic approach to help you get back on track, get group therapy, and you get to learn healthy ways to manage your food and your diet. So that way, when you get back out into the world, you have the coping skills you need, plus the food skills that you need to return to a healthy life. I hope that you found this video informational. I hope I was able to answer all your questions about bulimia, but if I didn't, or if you need clarification on something, or there are still questions lingering in your mind, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below. I'd be more than glad to answer them. And until next time.